That's better. Close on him, Gareth.
Carwyn James was arguably the greatest coach the Welsh team never had.
Every single one of you, think about it, think about it, think about it. It's a thinking game.
For Carwyn, rugby was a form of art.
Well, we play to win, but secondly, the manner of winning matters a great deal.
He was an aesthetic man, a sensitive man, a liberal-minded man. And when you have those qualities, as well as the knowledge and intelligence about the game, it seems so stupid to waste it.
As a sportsman, scholar and politician, Carwyn lived his life in the public gaze.
Well, he could see very far, and he wanted to go far. And he did go far.
Yet a quarter of a century after his death, he remains an enigma. Carwyn James was born in 1929 in the Gwendraeth Valley on the western edge of the South Wales coalfield.
I was born and brought up in this industrial village, Carwyn, located literally under the shadow of the coal tips. The black pyramids are part of the scenery, a symbol of economic wealth. It is sobering to think how much mineral wealth has left this valley.
Carwyn's father, Michael James, was a miner at Crosshands Colliery. He and his wife Anne had 4 children, of whom Carwyn was the youngest. Carwyn's sister, Gwen, played an important role in his life from the start.
Well, I had to look after him when he was a small baby because my other brother had diphtheria. My mother looked after him and I looked after Carwyn. And I suppose we started from a very early age being great friends.
One of Carwyn's earliest memories was, as a 3-year-old, pleading with his father to take him to see a rugby game in the field behind their house.
I'm afraid to watch on my own, and I don't like to hear the people shouting. Their voices, coarse and primitive, frighten me. I hold my father's large, warm, collier's hand, and I feel safe.
It wasn't long before Carwyn took to the field himself. He enjoyed football, cricket and rugby, and showed a natural gift for all.
They were extremely happy days, but there were certain fears inevitably. The fear of seeing an ambulance, for instance, coming around the corner. When a number of us used to play soccer or cricket, our eyes would then be riveted on this ambulance and hoping that it would not stop outside one's own house.
If Carwyn needed an escape from the harsh realities of life in a mining village, he found it here.
To arrive in Llanelli, a little village in South Cardiganshire where my mother was born, is like entering the promised land. I know I belong, that my roots are here, far away from the realities of life, the school, the black pyramids, the dread of the ambulance, and the disturbing siren.
Back in Carwyn, Carwyn was making his mark at Gwendraeth Grammar School, where he was head prefect and captain of the school rugby team, under the guidance of sportsmaster Gwynfil Rhys.
He had one little weakness, and that was tackling. He didn't like to tackle at all. Carwyn's idea of a good tackle was to let the boy go past him, and then he'd nip behind him, ankle tap him, and the boy was down, and Carwyn was quite happy about it. But we decided that perhaps he should tackle properly. So I took the school hooker out, and his vice captain, by the way, too, Dilwyn Roberts, and we made Carwyn tackle him, gave him the ball. He rushed at Carwyn time and time again, and Carwyn had to tackle him.
The other great influence in Carwyn's life was Welsh mistress Miss Dora Williams. She introduced Carwyn to the poems of Gwenallt, and arranged for him and other pupils to listen to the first radio broadcasts by the poet T.H. Parry Williams. Soon, Carwyn wanted to follow in the footsteps of these literary giants.
He intended going up to Bristol to do Welsh under Sir T.H. Parry Williams and Gwenallt and those, and he found out that I had also done Welsh with them up there. So very often on rugby trips it was quite amusing really, whereas before we'd go on a trip and he'd sit next to me, he was my captain, so he'd sit next to me then, we'd have a chat about what we were going to do, tactics for the game, what the team was like, and he was thriving then, you know. He seemed to know more about the opposing school teams than I did, and we discuss it. But after that, very often we talk about poetry, about Sir T.H. Parry Williams, what was Gwenallt like as a lecturer, and things like that.
In 1948, Carwyn got a place studying Welsh at Aberystwyth University. By the time he left Cefn, he'd won 6 schoolboy caps for Wales and had played for Llanelli.
I was the unfortunate outside half of the college at the time, you see. So I'd been back 2 years from the Navy at that time, and I'd been the outside half in the side. And here was this genius coming up from Gwendraeth, and I'd really thought, well, this is the end of my time. But unfortunately for Carwyn, of course, I was then the captain that year, and the captain in Aberystwyth is always the chairman of selectors, and poor old Carwyn didn't have a hope for the first year.
Carwyn initially contented himself with playing for the second team and for Aberystwyth Town, but he also found time to engage in nationalist politics, becoming president of the college branch of Plaid Cymru in 1951.
His particular aura as a rugby figure drew people to the party meetings that would never come there otherwise. So they were very well attended, with the usual crowd plus the rugby element that came in tow with Carwyn.
I remember once when he was due to play for us on a Saturday, he blithely said on the Friday, "I can't come tomorrow, I'm lying on the railway line in Tregaron." It was the time when British Rail were threatening to close the Carmarthen-Aberystwyth line, and Carwyn felt very strongly about this, and for Carwyn to give up a game of rugby, the principle must have been strong indeed.
Number 10, you'll never get anywhere acting like that! On rear rank.
On leaving Aberystwyth in 1952, Carwyn was called up for national service. The Royal Navy was on the lookout for promising young players for its rugby team. It was arranged that Carwyn be posted to Portsmouth. With Britain engaged in the Cold War, leading coder James DMX 918946 was required to learn Russian.
I hated the whole idea of being in a military establishment. I resented having to do national service, and having taken an honours degree, I found 5 hours of Russian per day, plus an inordinate amount of preparation in the evening, very tiresome.
During his time in Portsmouth, Carwyn played for both the Royal Navy and the London Welsh, whom he led to victory in the 1954 seven-a-side tournament at Twickenham. After leaving the Navy, Carwyn became a teacher, first in Carmarthen and then at Llandovery College, where he taught Welsh. At Llandovery, the 40 cigarettes Carwyn smoked a day earned him the nickname Kipper.
9:10 or so, maybe we'd go and wake him up, coffee's ready, Mr. James, and all. And he would then come in his dressing gown, drink his black coffee, no sugar, no milk. Then he'd read his correspondence. If they were interesting letters, he'd read them out to us. Read the West Mail, James G. Thomas's article in particular. And then it was simply time to end the lesson.
Llandovery College had a fine reputation for rugby, and Carwyn learnt a great deal as assistant coach to legendary sportsmaster T.P. Williams. Carwyn was still playing regularly for Llanelli, and in 1958 he won his first full cap for Wales against Australia.
Shoving the Australians now. Wyn Evans to Carwyn, James a drop at goal, and a very good try, and it's over!
The game created quite a stir in Cefn.
A little village like this, 800 odd people,
He was the king, the hero, you know, he was everything. Everything rolled into one. I mean, for all of us, you know, as I said, we were a lot of boys in the village, and obviously sport was the big thing, you know, Liverpool, Manchester United and the rest of it. But rugby was big. And to get one of the blokes in the village, can you imagine, playing for Wales? I mean, unheard of, fantastic. Not only that, he went and in his first game, he dropped a goal. Well, I mean, he had Christmas, everything rolled into one on the same day.
My hero at that time was Carwyn James, simply because he had this magical quality of being able to sidestep. It was an electrifying thing to see it happen, so cleverly done, and so easily, it seems to me, to outwit the opponents, and I loved watching that. And of course, that, I would say, did have some influence on the way I played later on.
But Carwyn only ever played twice for Wales. His career as a player was doomed to be overshadowed by that of another outstanding outside half.
Here goes Cliff Morgan. A superb try that makes it 14-3.
I always thought, well, why did I play for Wales more times than Carwyn? And it's because I was stronger. My old games master, Ned Gribble, said, you've got to have strength. And he wrote in my school report, Cliff Morgan, not very good in class. His biggest asset is his buttocks, he said. Because he believed you had to have big buttocks to be able to ride tackles and that. And Carwyn was naturally slim and elegant, and I was squat and rather nasty in that sense. I loved playing against him because, I mean, he always had a smile. He's a cheeky little thing, he was, you know. And he used to always do that, you know, show with the ball like that, he did.
Nice flip. Now again, slip it. Now again. Now again.
That's better. Close on him, Gareth. Eyes on the ball, John.
It was off the field that Carwyn found his true niche. In the late 60s, he was chosen to coach the team closest to his heart, Llanelli.
Just bend the knees sufficiently, and then just straighten your knees will be quite enough. You'll get that forward thrust then, okay? Just bend them slightly. We'll watch it now this time. Right, down you go.
Carwyn brought his skills as a teacher to the rugby field.
He was never the heavy-handed, brutal coach. You know, he was always the guy who dragged it out of young people.
Coaxed it out. Yeah.
Coaxed it out of them, you know.
He could appeal to the really rough, tough guys, the big men, the ultra-physical men, people like Norman Gale, Stuart Gallagher. And he also had this appeal to perhaps the more creative, artistic players like J.J. Williams and Phil Bennett.
Now we know what we're setting out to do. The important thing is we want a fluid sort of game. We want to move this ball around as much as we possibly can.
Oh, he made you feel important. He made you feel that you were that little bit special. And I think that's one of the great secrets of his success, that he made players at times something they weren't.
And I want to see you getting a good tackle in the first minute or two. Right down on that ball. Hit the man hard. Then you can play your creative stuff.
You can make players feel better, and they're better players if you convince them that they are.
Think about it. That's the important thing. Every single one of you, think about it, think about it, think about it. It's a thinking game.
I feel let the boys have the chance to develop on any ideas that they have. And in this way, I think that they're just as creative as I am. And they are contributing, they know they're contributing, and they're enjoying the process. And this, of course, is the right way, I would have thought, to directing a play. I mean, too often you get producers who would say, this is the way to say the line, copy me. Yeah. Now, this is bad producing, I think.
Carwyn moved freely between the worlds of sport, the arts, and politics. In the 1970 general election, he stood as Plaid Cymru's candidate in Llanelli. The sense of Welshness that had been fostered in him during his childhood in Rhyd Lewis and Cyfeneithin was central to his political beliefs.
The spirit of Wales is born in the mountain farmhouse, in the cottage by the brook, in the coal miner's home. And if it be not fostered, the Welsh nation will become merely derivative and second-rate.
Man has a pride, he needs work. Mae dyn rhy fawr I gardod. And he needs work, not in Durham or in the Midlands, but here in Wales where his roots are.
A fortnight before the election, Carwyn was called to the East India Club in London. He'd applied for the job of coach on the next British Lions tour of New Zealand. The Lions Selection Committee inquired about his political ambitions.
I made 2 points. That I was competing with all my might to win the seat, even though the Labour majority was well over 20,000. And that in the current issue of the Llanelli Star, the odds quoted against the Plaid Cymru candidate were 10,000 to 1 against. So I politely offered to take the committee's pounds back home, in the hope that they would all make a quick 10,000. No offers were forthcoming.
When he came back from London, he said, I will not get that job because it's my politics. So I said to him, if you've told them the truth, you'll probably get it, because they'll have some belief in you.
Carwyn lost the election, but was awarded the job of coaching the Lions on their 1971 tour of New Zealand.
The Lions had never before won a test series anywhere. And it was my enjoyable task to try and combine the skills and the different styles of the 4 home countries into a team which could play as a British unit, but at the same time take full advantage of the individual flair of the players on that tour.
I doubt very much, in fact, as to whether I would have been able to go on the Lions tour had it not been for Carwyn's influence.
All I know is that, and I mean this, if Carwyn had not been the coach in New Zealand, I doubt very much if I'd gone. And I had a chat with him and I said, listen, I'm not one of these to do millions of press-ups and gallop 28 miles before a game or something daft like that. As long as I can prepare myself. And he didn't say, no, you'll do as you want. No, that's wrong. But he'll say, don't worry about things like that.
With the team, he was absolutely superb. He was their friend, their guide. He did everything that was necessary to make the boys feel happy. And the boys did feel happy with Carwyn as coach.
In 63 years, the Lions had never won a test series in New Zealand. Carwyn approached the challenge with military rigour. He compiled a dossier on New Zealand's clubs and players. He visited Manchester United to learn from their training methods. He travelled to Wigan to study rugby league techniques.
They are our enemies. We want to beat them. And my mind at the moment is on that first test, and we'll work it from there. If we can win that first test, I think we may well win a series.
Barry John taking very little time in preparation.
In the first test, things initially looked good for the Lions.
And he's done it. 6 points to 3 now, than the Lions in the lead.
But the All Blacks responded with a ferocious onslaught in the second half.
The Lions have got to get this clear now. This pressure by the All Blacks is tremendous. Kirkpatrick, 1 yard up. He's got to be held up. Brilliant tackle by John Taylor. 1 yard short. This is mammoth. The most exciting few minutes I've ever seen.
The Lions held fast, winning by 9 points to 3. The Kiwis had been taken by surprise, and they had no idea what to make of Carwyn.
I don't think they really understood the quiet approach, or the fact that there was a coach who was interested in the theatre, in drama, in literature, and what have you. These are regarded as sissy.
Look at that, Ian Kirkpatrick, the big...
The All Blacks had their revenge in the second test.
Can Barry John get him? He can't! What a try!
They beat the Lions 22-12. With both teams on an equal pegging, the stakes were high when they met for a third time.
Taylor's deflection. Edwards. He's nearly under the post. Can he get there to Barry John? And Barry John has scored!
The Lions won the series for the first time in their history. They were greeted as conquering heroes on their return to Britain. But Carwyn had a word of warning for the rejoicing crowds.
All I'd like to say is this. When the All Blacks come here in 72, they'll be a good side. They'll be a hard side to beat. And I only hope that every side that will play against them will prepare thoroughly, because they'll have to give it their best if they're going to beat any New Zealand side that comes on tour here.
When the All Blacks arrived in Britain in 1972, one of the teams facing them was Carwyn's Scarlets.
This is Philip Bennett, happily recovered from injury. There is no breeze in the air at all.
2 minutes after the first whistle, Llanelli were awarded a penalty.
Bated breath. The crossbar! Overthrown! Roy Burgess is the happy man.
A conversion by Phil Bennett made the score 6-0.
But then, the hard part, to maintain and to hold that lead, to actually beat the All Blacks. It was a long way off. The game had only just started.
And here's Hill. Fletchley with bated breath. That's the scoreboard, the historic-looking scoreboard. Hopkins feeds. Roy Thomas does his stuff together with Crock and Llewellyn. Fletchley win. That's where Bennett wants it. It's all over. History has been made at Rally Park. What a tremendous moment.
I think that after that particular game, Carwyn, fleetingly, be it for a day, a week, a month, was at peace with himself. He had fulfilled what he believed that he could do.
Carwyn scored a second personal triumph that year on stage at the National Eisteddfod in Haverfordwest. As president of the day, he made a stirring speech that appealed to both radical and conservative elements in nationalist politics.
It was the greatest performance, that was marvellous. The script was his own as well, which added to it. And he knew that he'd performed well that day. Of course, the applause was tremendous, and a long applause. Then once it was over, then he wanted away from there then, that had finished. And as it happened, I was nearby somewhere, and he said, come on, let's go. And out of the Eisteddfod field straight away, up the road a few miles to a quiet little pub where nobody knew him at all, to have a quiet drink there.
Despite his gifts as a teacher and mentor, Carwyn could be a solitary, enigmatic figure.
It was difficult to get very close to Carwyn in that respect, and people could get close to him in different aspects of his life. But as a complete being, I think it was an impossible task.
Carwyn wasn't a committee man, and this was to deny him the ultimate prize in his profession. He had been passed over for the job of Welsh coach several times, and had stood for election as an officer of the Welsh Rugby Union, without success. In 1974, frustrated by these rejections, Carwyn fired a shot across the bows of the WRU. He wrote them a letter in which he laid down the conditions under which he'd accept the job of national coach.
In that letter, he imposed conditions which were totally unacceptable. Not unacceptable to the committee in general terms, but in actual fact, if he'd have been appointed on the terms which he was demanding, it would have been against the constitution of the union. It would have been an unconstitutional appointment because he really wanted to be the manager, the supremo, call it what you will. And the committee didn't have the powers to do that. So that his application was immediately ruled out of court. It was he himself really who caused this so-called rejection.
He made such difficult demands. For instance, he wanted to be the sole coach and the sole selector. I think that was something that at that moment of time the Welsh Rugby Union could not accept. And I think that he, for the only time in his life, I felt that he was slightly too autocratic. I think if he'd said to the Welsh Rugby Union, well, I'll coach, but it doesn't matter who the selectors are, because in the end, anyway, he would have been the sole selector, because he had that sort of a personality. I think he would have had his way, but he did make too many demands, I think, at that moment of his life.
In writing his letter, Carwyn ensured that he would never coach the Welsh side. He turned instead to Italy. Carwyn spent 2 seasons coaching Rovigo, leading them to victory in the Italian Championship. Carwyn immersed himself in Italian culture.
I have to read. What is the command in Italian?
Leggi, per favore.
Leggi, per favore.
Read, please. Leggi. Grazie.
Il sole è molto importante.
Carwyn's Italian teacher in Rovigo, Angelo Morello, later said that Carwyn had been unable to express his true personality in his own country, that he had suffered from an inability to express his feelings, particularly his feelings of love.
Mejor torero.
Carwyn's sexuality had been the subject of gossip and speculation for some time. Homosexuality was still a largely taboo subject in the Wales of the 1970s.
He could not have led the life in Cefneithin that he did lead later in Cardiff, because the constrictions of that small community would have been a great burden on him as he developed in life later on. And there were some things that would never have been accepted in his home community and with a family and with his friends at home, things that would have been frowned on.
He should have been a family man, he loved children, and he should have got married and brought up a family. That would have given him some incentive in life.
Lots of things in Wales are kept quiet. Nobody knows anything about them. It'd be far better if things are not bottled up. It will give more people a chance to live their life as they would like to. And of course they say life is what you make it. Not with everybody.
During the 70s, Carwyn used his unique sporting insight to forge a new career for himself in the media. His appearances on Sports Lineup were required viewing for anyone with the slightest interest in rugby.
In this game, and in others that I have watched in Europe during the last couple of years, their approach against strong opposition is cautious. Life is extremely serious. The playing of games is serious. Winning for the sake of national prestige is terribly important.
By the 1980s, Carwyn was suffering a number of problems with his health. He had excruciatingly painful eczema, which affected almost every part of his body. And a lifetime of 40 cigarettes a day and countless gin and tonics was taking its toll. At the start of 1983, Carwyn took a holiday alone in Amsterdam. On the 10th of January, he suffered a heart attack.
The top rugby coach, Carwyn James, has died at the age of 53. He was found dead in a hotel room in Amsterdam where he'd gone for a short holiday.
Carwyn's friend and fellow outside half, Cliff Morgan, said at the time, "I know he's dead, but I don't have to believe it if I don't want to."